Into the mouth with my other dose. 10 minutes of staring at the blankness, and then I started to draw. It'd be a group scene, I decided. 8 guys just sitting around a saloon. No, at an outdoor party, like a wedding. Just a bunch of regular guys who liked a belt or two after work, and the drawing went very fast. No detail, just blocking in the relative positions of the figures. After I'd got that down, I mixed up a big batch of flake white and added a little ochre and azurite to it to make a neutral gray, and then I blocked in the outlines of the figures. They say I can do only heads, and this is my answer to them. Carduccio and the other royal painters, they mock me as an upstart who knows how to imitate nature, but has no conception of how to make a true painting with ideas, in the Florentine style. All of them, Carduccio, Caxes, and Nardi, will never forgive me for having won the competition His Majesty ordered for the painting of the expulsion of the Moors. And I've heard they were joking that I only won because I am a Moor myself, being from Seville, where there is so much impure blood. Yet I am painter to the king, and I am usher of the chamber, and will rise higher still. If these calumnies on my blood reach the king, he will not hear them. Besides, I am well in with his grace, the Count Duke of Olivares, and his word should sustain me against all slanderers. I finished the outlining and returned to my apartment. I am short with Juana, as I always am when I am on a new painting, and I go to bed early. Again these strange dreams of hell, monsters of noise and light that's neither from sun nor candle, infernal light that warps all colors into impossible shades. I go to Mass early and pray that these dreams may cease, and then back to work, this time with models. I have Antonio Rojas today, a mason, and I give him as much wine as he wants. He grins like an ape at me, and I take his likeness, quickly, and then dismiss him with a clap on the back and 50 maravedi. Then comes in a butcher from the royal kitchen, who I paint as my Bacchus. When he has left me, I look at the unfinished painting. There is something wrong with it, but I don't know what it is. Perhaps the figures are too crowded together in the foreground, as if they were all sitting on a rail. I have tried to correct the composition, but it is still unsatisfying. The faces and figures are from nature and full enough of life, but the space therein is not real space. There is a secret here I don't know, and none of the fools who paint in this kingdom can advise me. Not that I would ask. Yet, God willing, His Majesty will like it, I think, and it's still better than anything Carduccio ever did. A boy comes in with a message from His Majesty, and I must leave this and change my clothes to be fit for his presence. I believe he must have decided on the portrait of his late father that he mentioned on Friday last. That arm is not right either. I came out of it walking down Canal Street in a cold rain, wearing a T-shirt and jeans and no shoes. When I got back to my loft, I was not surprised to see my canvas was full of Los Borrachos, or The Feast of Bacchus, by Velázquez. Not the completed painting, but the underpainting and 2 almost completed faces, the Bacchus and the guy in the middle with the sombrero and the drunken grin. The paint was still a little wet, and you could see where he, or I, had repainted the peasant on the extreme right, giving him a new head, and where the figure in the back had just been painted in a failed attempt to give the whole thing more depth. I could see what he meant about Bacchus's arm. It was set into the shoulder a little wrong, and the foreshortening was off a hair. The face was terrific, though. I took a shower, changed my clothes, and carefully made myself a Gibson with my dad's silver shaker. Pearl onions are among the only foodstuffs in my refrigerator, those and olives, because sometimes I prefer a martini. Thinking back, it occurred to me that I must have spent a couple of days at least in Velázquez's life this time, given the work on the painting, and so I was curious to see how much time I had actually spent in, can I still call it, real time. The little screen on my answering machine told me that approximately 34 hours had passed since I had set up the canvas, something my belly was starting to confirm, and the Gibson was having an unusually powerful effect on my brain and balance. There were 15 messages on my machine, said the little lights, and I ran through them and answered the one from Mark Slotsky. "Where have you been, man?" he demanded when he answered his cell phone before I could say my name. This still annoys me that technology tells us who's on the phone. Another little erosion of the social. There were saloon noises in the background. "I've been leaving messages," he added. "You heard I bought Kate?" "Yeah, thanks. I presume you have a Winslet fan you're going to shop it to?" "A Velázquez fan, actually. Terrific piece of work." "Yeah, right. Listen, can you come over now? I have something you ought to see." "Now? I got Jackie Moreau here. We're at the Blue Orange. What have you got?" "More Velázquez? Really, you need to see this." He agreed, and 20 minutes later the two of them came in, both antic with drink, but they quieted down when they saw what was on the easel. "Jesus, Wilmot, what the fuck is this?" Mark said. "What does it look like?" "It looks like Velázquez's Feast of Bacchus, about a third finished." He looked around for a pinned-up reproduction, and when he didn't find one, he said, "You're copying it from memory?" "I'm not copying it at all. I took some Salvinorin, and I was back in 1628, and I was him. Painting it, I mean. And when I came to, this was on the easel. Pretty neat, huh?" "It's incredible," Mark said, and leaned close to the painting, touching it tentatively with a fingertip. "Have you ever seen the radiographs of this thing? I mean the ones published in the literature?" "No," I said. "I'm not a scholar like you. Why do you ask?" "Because what you got here is an early version, without the pentimenti. You know, if it wasn't fucking insane and impossible, I'd almost believe you were telling me the truth." Jackie said, "Can you be other people too? Because if you were Corot or Monet, you could have yourself a nice little business with this." And we laughed, and then Mark stopped laughing and said, "What'll you take for it?" "It's not finished," I said, "and it's not for sale." "No, really, what'll you take for it?" $10,000, I said, meaning it as a joke. But he whipped a checkbook out of his jacket and wrote a check, with a gold Mont Blanc the size of an anti-tank round. I stared at the yellow slip of paper, stunned. "You think there's a market in unfinished old master copies?" "There's a market for everything. All you have to do is create it." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I turned to Jackie, who, like the sweet guy he is, was grinning like a monkey, enjoying my good fortune. "I thought you were going to Europe," I said. "Tomorrow. We were having a bon voyage at l'Orange Bleu when you called. You were invited, but you did not return all these calls." I said, "Well, let's continue the party." "Agreed," said Jackie. "And the drinks are on you." There were a lot of drinks, and we closed the place and poured Jackie into a cab after he'd given us more than one Gallic embrace, with kisses. Then Mark hailed a cab of his own and told me he'd have some people come by for the painting in a week or so, when it'd be dry enough to move. I went back home, and when I got there I took it off the easel and turned it to the wall. It was starting to freak me out a little. The next day I was awakened from the sleep of the sot by a pounding on my loft door, and it was Bosco. He wanted to show me something, his latest. Nice to see a guy still excited about art, so I went down to take a look. He'd been talking about doing this for a while, using the barrel of 9/11 dust he collected back then, a major critique of what he called the fascist hysteria that enabled the Iraq War. In his loft, the masturbating girls were gone, sold to some rich creep in Miami, he said, replaced by a huge plexiglass case that must have measured 10 by 10 by 20 feet. It was equipped with lights and TV projectors, and peopled with his trademark rag dolls. He made me sit down in front of it and switched it on. A great show, I have to say. He had video loops of Bush and Giuliani playing on the faces of dolls dressed in clown suits, and video loops of the planes striking the Twin Towers projected on the background. He'd made pneumatic models of the Twin Towers that expanded upward and collapsed in spastic jerks. At the foot of one tower, he'd built a little trackway on which tiny figures made up as Orthodox Jews escaped from the building before each collapse and vanished down a miniature subway entrance. The air compressor that operated the towers also shot gusts of air to blow little styrofoam dolls dressed as cops and firemen and civilians up into the air to fall down again, these figures suitably charred and blood-spattered, complemented with tiny amputated heads and limbs. and he'd filled the whole box with the actual gray 9/11 dust, which made interesting clouds in the space above the yapping dummies, as well as ever-shifting drifts on everything in the box. The soundtrack was a densely layered mix of politicians speaking, newscasters casting, explosions, and screams of anguish. From a separate speaker came hysterical laughter. This speaker was embedded in one of those amusement park chortling torsos that used to grace penny arcades back in the 40s. He'd redressed it as a Saudi Arab. "What do you think?" he asked after I had stared some minutes. "I think you've outdone yourself with respect to sheer offensiveness. It's as if Duchamp had presented his urinal filled with piss." "You think so? Well, thanks, but I really wanted to rig it with gas, for real flames, but I was worried about the dust igniting, and also the gallery was freaked out about the fire insurance. Maybe I could use colored foils or plastic film. It would flap pretty good in the breeze in there, for a fiery effect." "I think it's perfect as it is, and besides you have the video projection of the actual flames." "Are you really going to show this in a gallery?" "Yeah. Cameron Etzler's giving me the whole of their Soho space next month. It's gonna be big." I told him that I thought it would be, and left for my place, trying without much success to keep the envy out of my heart. I looked through my recent sketchbooks and thought about what Chaz would paint if he were going to get big, recalling my recent subway thoughts, that notion of deep analysis of modern faces using traditional techniques. How to generate dignity and keep from descending into kitsch. Man ordering pizza? Woman looking for MetroCard? Is it still possible? Not anything like photorealism, no. Everything steel but the breastplates. The bumpers on the cars all phony. A copy of a Kodachrome slide flashed onto the canvas. Structure, weight, authority. The authority of the paint applied on a living surface. Sprezzatura. Velázquez's dwarves and grotesques. Revive the bodegones, but with what we've experienced in the past centuries added. It has to show on the faces. I smoked half a pack and filled my paper shredder with sketches, but nothing came, and after a while I gave up and went out.